Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and we're back for yet another week of Joe on Joe Illustrated. And as teased last episode with that awesome G.I. Joe 93 prologue to the Snake Eyes face reveal. Well, actually, it was the Snake Eyes face reveal. It was a prologue to the Snake Eyes face surgery stuff. We're diving right into the Snake Eyes Trilogy, Part 1, A Warrior Reborn. I'm very excited. This is it's long been a big favorite of mine. And I will say it was a favorite of mine, I think, before I appreciated G.I. Joe as I do now. You know what I mean? Like, I was reading this concurrently in 89. I'd been reading comics for just a couple of years at that point. I'd been collecting G.I. Joe since, like 84, I think, was my first year. Maybe late 83. Mid 83, going in 84. So I already had my G.I. Joe Snake Eyes adventures. And Snake Eyes he was a favorite toy, but he wasn't a huge part of Sunbow. So I think character-wise, he wasn't a huge part of me. And then, picking up a lot of the Joe comics piecemeal as back issues, Snake Eyes certainly was always exciting, and I had to get the silent issue. I'm sure I had it at this point. And, his origin issues were always a big deal. But then this, I guess what I'm saying is I think this might have been the first big Snake Eyes specific reveal origin that I remember going through in real time. That's where I'm getting at with this, is like the other stuff I would pick up as back issues. So I'd read about them in, say, Marvel Age or in Letters Pages or in whatever comic book stuff I could get my hands on to teach me about comics at the time. And I'd be like, okay, I gotta get 26 and 27. Okay, I gotta get those. And then I gotta get this 21. I don't know, there's no dialogue, but I gotta get it. Stuff like that. This was, no, you're just going to get this story. You can't run out and buy it just when you want it. You're going to have to wait till the books come out. Luckily, they were coming out bi-weekly, so it was every 2 weeks. But I was living with this story, and I think maybe that's why it settled in for me as being an absolute favorite. Plus, it's a really fun story. Having said that, there's parts of this that I forgot. I got to be real. I forgot about the Baroness brother thing. When I read that last week, I went, it was tickling a memory. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, that's right. And then as I'm reading it this week, I'm going, oh, no, this is the origin. This is it. This is where the producers of G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra got the stupid Baroness brother idea. They got it from this comic book of making Cobra Commander her brother. It's from this trilogy. I was like, oh, that is so painful. That is so painful that they took, and granted, as Snake Eyes' origin has grown in these books, and, he has connections with Cobra Commander, and he has connections now with the Baroness, and, I'm not a massive fan of that. I like it when it's a little cleaner, but it still works in the comic book page. I would absolutely argue. It works for a comic book. Comic books are soap opera. Man, did I not like the Baroness's brother stuff in Rise of Cobra, plus the whole she's brain. I mean, there's a lot to not like about that stuff, but they got the brother stuff from this trilogy, and it brought up bad, sad memories, but that's okay. We're going onwards and upwards because I love this comic book. It's G.I. Joe number 94, and if you love comics, and if you love movies, then you probably would love listening to our sponsor, the Movies in a Meal podcast.
Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts. And you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie? It's about not two movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. You know, it's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out one episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show.
You guys really should give them a listen. They're fantastic fellows. And while you're signing up to listen to them on your favorite podcatcher, why don't you leave me a review? Whatever podcatcher you're on, I'm sure there's a review system. Give me 5 stars, 5 out of 20. give me 1 out of 5 stars. Give me as many stars as you feel is accurate, but just give me some stars, because the more reviews a podcast gets, the more action on it, and then these algorithms show it in more places, and all the various algorithms. You know about the algorithms, and send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know if you want to participate in the show in any way. I'm happy to welcome people on. I've teased this out before. I absolutely need to get back to doing live interviews and cartoons, because the list of people who now want to be on the show is longer than a phrase that I won't use on this family-friendly show. And it is, I need to get back to it. So I promise you guys, I got a lot going on. Life-wise, just normal stuff, but I will make time to start doing the interviews again. See, this is easy. This is me sitting at home carving out an hour without any travel, without any coordination, and just me and my thoughts and some comic books, and that's always easy, and that's why I love it, and I hope that's why you guys dig it too. And while you're digging it, dig me on Instagram at Joe on Joe Pod, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and say hi. You know, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook. I don't do a ton of posts on Facebook, but it's there. It shares the books. But say hi there. You know, we'll start up conversations, and so on and so forth. Now,
You were saying?
this is where we look at comic books that were on the shelf the same month that G.I. Joe issue 94. And this is cover dated December of 94. And so that means, technically, it actually means it was on the shelf in December 94. Sorry, it's issue 94. It's December of 89. That means it's on the shelf in August of 1989. So we're going to look at, we're going to start looking at Marvel comics that were sharing shelf space, say that 3 times, with G.I. Joe number 94. Oh my gosh, it's the seminal Alf. Holy cow, Alf had a month. Alf must have been going bi-weekly as well, because Alf has the Alf Holiday Special, Alf 22, Alf 23, and Alf 24. Alf was having a moment, everyone. Let's not forget that. There is one issue of Alf that is really has a very subversive cover on it. I'm actually blanking on what the cover is right now, but I'm sure it's something X-rated and unintentionally X-rated, and it's actually worth a fair amount of money. But these other, I know I've read the Alf special actually, and it's charming. It's Alf, you know. He Planet Melmac is alive and well. Over at Amazing Spider-Man, Eric Larson has entered the chat. Now Todd McFarlane has left it, and even back then, it was living in the shadow of McFarlane, because Larson's artwork has a lot of the same feels as McFarlane's does, and it still does to this day. He is a creator who I respect a lot. I don't read a lot of his stuff. When I do, it's enjoyable. It's definitely the old school comic tradition, with a fresher look on it. And his figures are obviously super distinctive. His style is very distinctive, cartoony and exaggerated, but he knows what he's doing with that, so he actually can pull it off pretty well. But I really, really, really respect what he's done with Savage Dragon, This is a character that he loved, and I guess what he created in high school or grade school, grammar school even, or something like that. And that idea stuck with him. And, he broke into comics and did his own comic book stuff. And then once Image cropped up, and according, on this timeline, we're in 89, and like a year from now, he had the opportunity to take this childhood character, Savage Dragon, and make it into a real life character. And he did it. And not only did he do it, he committed to it and has published it consecutively for the last 30 years, guys. That's awesome. Very much, it's very much that work ethic. I feel the same way about stuff like with this pod or with, where you go, no, I'm going to set a goal. I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm going to plug away and do it every month. It may be, may sell crazy. It may get a ton of listens. It may just get a few listens. It's something I want to do. It's something I want to finish. I want to get to that finish line, and I'm going to keep doing it, So like for me, it was, I want to do all the Sunbows. So I got to there and I'm like, all right, now I'm going to do all the DSCs. So I got to there. Then it was, I'm going to do all the extremes. And I got to there. I'm going to take a little break, but then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do all this. And like I'm doing a Real American Hero. I don't plan on stopping this until we get to 155 at least. And then probably, maybe at that point, maybe take a little break, but then come back and jump into the Devil's Due stuff, do it chronologically. Like that kind of like, yeah, no, I said I'm going to do this, and so I'm going to do this. And he's continued to put out Savage Dragon for all these years. And it's great. And his, I actually like his artwork a lot. But I see how it can be off-put. I mean, it's so exaggerated. It can be a little, hit or miss for some people. It's definitely not grounded. It's grounded with real body structures, but it's everyone's a walking, talking cartoon. But it works really well for me. It definitely worked on Spider-Man, but it also definitely lived in that McFarlane shadow. And anyone that was going to follow McFarlane was going to have a rough patch of it. But when you follow him and your style is remarkably close to his, or at least in the same, it's in the same ballpark as his, I think fans were a little like, who's this Johnny come lately? Like we love Todd. And from that, then I don't think his run got the respect it deserved. Although it was hot. I mean, it was hot. Like this made him one of the hot creators, but it was like on that Todd coattail thing. So I'm just saying, I'm glad to see him still working. Byrne is still going strong over on Avengers West Coast. This is that 52. This is also bi-weekly. This is that really disturbing cover that I was so hoping we were going to get in WandaVision. And if we don't, I pray that we get a version of this in, I guess Multiverse of Madness, which is where Wanda's going to show up next, the next Doctor Strange movie, where it was the demon that had created her children. It wasn't Mephisto. It was, what's this guy's name? I forget, because he was a real minor Marvel. It's funny because he was a really minor Marvel villain. Oh, Master Pandemonium, like a really minor Marvel demon. That's a fun tangent about Marvel is they would just make these new demons. And so like, whether it's because someone said, oh, I'm using Mephisto on this book, or this person's like, oh, like they would just make new demons and make new, B-level bad guys. So there's just a ton of them. And eventually something cool gets done with them, or not, but you're still building this world, and in this case, like these levels of hell where all these demons exist, and all these, there's Nightmare and Mephisto and Master Pandemonium and Dormammu, and all of them can be seen as quote unquote the devil, but none of them are the devil. They're just these lords of the underrealm. Oh, and Mr. Pym and Nastier from with Magic with the X-Men. Like there's always these levels of hell and limbo, and Kang lived in limbo, but then there was another limbo, and that comes from the joy of this collaborative universe that all these creators were making. So you get this back to what's great about this cover. It's Master Pandemonium, and in his chest is a like a 5-pointed or 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It would be a 6-pointed star, I think. And it's missing 2 points, and it's his soul, like it's his soul, and his hands are Wanda's children. Let's just get to it. His hands, his arms, from his elbows to his hands, are screaming babies, and those babies are Wanda's children. It is drawn by Byrne, so it's got this really superhero look to it and grounded look to it. But if you think about what it is a horrific image on the cover of this comic book. Always underrated. So I pray that whoever's working on that next Wanda arc, I'm sure they know about this cover. I just want them to work in at some point her two kids from WandaVision, Billy and Tommy. And I need them to be on the hands of a demon screaming for their lives, because this cover is just fantastic. And this, of course, is, it's that arc when Wanda's really having breakdowns and stuff. Captain America continues. One of these recent issues was, Crossbones' first appearance. The Acts of Vengeance starts this month with Cap 365. Acts of Vengeance was very, very cool. You've probably heard of it. It's a great idea. It was executed right. Really, this is right before the massive connected company crossovers happened. So, so Secret Wars was a few years earlier, and that was just a story that crossed over everybody. And then they did Secret Wars 2, and then they said, here's this main story, but then let's cross over all these other books. So there were a lot of Secret Wars 2 crossovers. Then they kind of stepped back a little with Acts of Vengeance, and they actually kind of went the other way. And there is no main Acts of Vengeance storyline, right? So this, what I'm saying is, like, they didn't kind of perfect. I still don't think they have, but they didn't really kind of perfect that equation of the Secret Wars 2 model, because Secret Wars 2 I don't think sold as well as they wanted to. And frankly, it's because they did too many and they were terrible. Secret Wars 2 is not a great story. But Acts of Vengeance, the idea of it, I wish there was a main series, and there isn't. The main, quote-unquote, main story ran through the Avengers books, but it also took place in all these other books. So in order to really, really understand Acts of Vengeance, you really had to get every Acts of Vengeance crossover, which is, quite frankly, asking a lot. So the premise is Loki... And, well, you don't know it's Loki, actually. Loki is disguised as, like, this mysterious other dude. But Magneto, somebody gets together all the bad guys, and it's Magneto, Red Skull, Doctor Doom. Eventually, they reveal it's Loki. Who else was in there? I don't think Namor was considered one of the bad guys at the time. But, the Kingpin, I think, was part of that main crew. So they get all these, like, the real heavy hitters of the Marvel Universe together, and they say to them, hey, Magneto, you've been getting your butt kicked by the X-Men all this time. You've been, Red Skull, you always lose to Captain America. So let's have your enemies fight my good guy, and my enemies will fight your good guy. It's strangers on a train in comic book form, and it's a great idea. It's hard for people it's hard to collect all this into an omnibus, because I think the omnibus would be just massive, because it is literally the culmination of all these crossovers. They would check in on the bad guys in their little ready room, and they would say, oh, yeah, this is happening. And it just doesn't have a coherent spine to the story. And the story is that they were being manipulated by Loki. But conceptually, Acts of Vengeance is great. And the execution is like, they get like a 6 or 7 on the execution. But the idea is like a 9 or a 10. So in Avengers West Coast, they're fighting the UFOs, which always fought the Hulk. In Avengers 311, who are they fighting? I'm not sure exactly who the bad guys are on the covers. They look like... Let me see here. See if I can expand this a little bit. Actually, I have no idea who these bad guys are fighting. But they're not normal Avengers. Sorry about that. I have no idea who that is. Cap is fighting Namor, which, at the time, Namor was a quasi-good guy. What else? Acts of Vengeance. Doctor Strange went up against the Enchantress, who was, a Thor villain. The Fantastic Four... They fought against a whole host of dudes like Stiltman. I think that's a Tuma, the Beetle. Like, they were fighting all these like Spider-Man villains and Avengers villains that they normally, the Hulk fought. No, let's see. Yeah. The Hulk fought the Grey Gargoyle, which was very cool. Iron Man fought the Wrecker and the Wrecking Crew. Moon Knight is fighting. Well, it looks like he's teamed up with the Punisher, and they're fighting Ultimatum, which is like a Cap bad guy. Actually, it's from, if you guys watch the Falcon and Winter Soldier stuff. Who else is this month? Police Academy, the comic book. 3 and 4 are on the shelves. Quasar. Quasar's fighting the Absorbing Man, which is great. This is fun. A trade paperback, The Ballad of Beta Ray Bill, is on the shelf, which I absolutely had, and it reprinted those early Simonson Beta Ray Bill Thor stories. This is one of the early trades that Marvel ever did. So that's a fun little piece of history. Thor fought the Juggernaut. That's right. You also got during this Acts of Vengeance, you got the first appearance of the New Warriors. They appeared in Thor 412, which was this month. The X-Men fought the man, they fought him. They fought the Mandarin, who was Iron Man's bad guy. And this was, you get the first appearance of Psylocke in her Quanon Psylocke ninja form in X-Men 256. And this was, remember, after the X-Men went through the Siege Perilous. We talked a little bit about that last week. And then X-Factor fought... No, X-Factor's not coordinating. That's right. They're in the middle of their Paul Smith crossover. So you see what I'm saying? How much fun that is with Acts of Vengeance. I wish it had a better spine. Just wish it had a better spine. Anyway, that's it for Marvel Comics.
You were saying?
Over at DC Comics, biggest book of the month, Batman 442. It's the first Tim Drake as Robin. Tim Drake comes out as Robin. That's a little joke for any of you paying attention to the news lately. Also, this month, a fun cover, and this book should skyrocket in value based on the fact that John Cena in Suicide Squad is great, but Peacemaker is on the cover of Checkmate 23, and it is absolutely highlighting the fact that he's wearing a toilet seat on his head. Without a doubt, that is a toilet seat. God bless him, it is a toilet seat. Green Lantern Emerald Dawn, #1, hit the stands. This is the Mark Bright... speaking of Mark Bright with G.I. Joe, the Mark Bright and Christopher Priest started book retelling Green Lantern's origin, and it was kind of doing like a year one for Green Lantern because DC had such success with Batman. I really love Emerald Dawn. I found Emerald Dawn actually when Emerald Dawn 2 came out. I was then getting into DC. I was not into DC yet, and there were a ton of advertisements for Emerald Dawn 2, and there was a promotional book that told me all about Emerald Dawn 2. And I was like, well, this Emerald Dawn 1 sounds amazing. And it was great. First issue is written by Christopher Priest. Then afterwards, it's then written, someone else picks it up. And blank on who it was. It might be Gerard Jones, because he was going on to write the Green Lantern series after this. But or maybe Giffen took it over. But point is, Chris Priest didn't write it after the first issue. And 30 years later, actually recently at Long Beach Con a couple years back, I was able to ask Priest. I finally met him for the first time, which was a huge honor. I'm a big fan of his work. And I was able to ask him about that. And his recollection was that after one issue, he just realized he wasn't a fit for that character. Like, that wasn't anything that was really interested in him. And so he passed the reign. Could you imagine, like, how cool? I think that's great. Because you get this opportunity, and he had been working in comics for a long time at that point. He was one of the first I think he was the first African-American writer in Spider-Man. And he was one of the early editors back in the 70s. And to get this opportunity to redefine one of the major characters, and it wasn't jiving. Like, it just wasn't clicking. So instead of like fighting through and doing a not great job, I think that sounded like that's what he was saying to me. They passed the mic. Now, I may be recollecting that a little differently, but what was awesome was I had a chance to finally ask him, because it always bothered me, because I really loved this first issue and the whole series, but I really loved the first issue. It was a little controversial. They made Hal Jordan an alcoholic and drunk driver and all this stuff, but it was also the era of trying to humanize DC heroes by giving them those flaws. Giving them something that was just a sledgehammer of a change. So that was something new to Hal's character, that, they made him an alcoholic. And when Jeff Johns would revive Green Lantern, 20 years after this, I think what they did is because they got away from the whole drunk driving alcoholism stuff with Hal pretty quickly, but then he still didn't have that. So they really played up the womanizer thing. And I think that works better for Hal. that he's just a cad, and that's his character flaw. That he's just a love him and leave him a gigolo kind of guy, instead of this potentially deadly dangerous killer on the street, ring slinger with a drinking problem. Having said that, though, the Emerald Dawn story is really, really great. And it was one of my seminal superhero ones. Also on the racks the same month as G.I. Joe 94, Justice League Year of 9. I'd read this years later, but it's a great, fun issue that explores a really great concept. What do you do when a superhero who's invulnerable has some medical issues? And what you do when Power Girl is on her deathbed or having some trouble, you have to call in Superman. And he has to use his heat vision to operate on her, and it's exemplified on the cover, and it's awesome. Legion number 2. This is the 5 year later stuff. This is a huge favorite of mine. This is the issue, a huge favorite, specifically this issue. This is where that first issue was a catch up on the whole galaxy, and then Cam and Rock start going around to recruit more Legion members. And they go to Rimbor, and they find Joe Na, who's Ultra Boy, who's like my personal favorite Legionnaire. And they find that he's living the life of, he's Han Solo. He's living like a smuggler pirate on his home planet of Rimbor. And hilarity and awesomeness ensues. But this made me fall in love with Joe Na and that character. I was like, who's this guy? He's the best. So that's a whole lot of fun there. What else? Anything good this month? Anything better than Tim Drake as Robin for the first time? And it's got that great cover of Tim Drake swinging through the bat symbol. You've seen it. It retails. There was a lot of this book put out there, so this retails for around $15, $10, something like that. It shouldn't be any less than $10. It definitely should be at least $10, but you can get your hands on it. It's fun. There's so many Robins. I hate to say this, a book will pop one day, but I feel like if they ever do like a live action, hey, here is literally Tim Drake, this would be one of the keys. So obviously his first appearance, but this would be another key book to have in your collection. And there you go.
You were saying?
Now, over in the movies, August 1989. There's a lot of movies in the theater. A lot of movies you've heard of. Well, maybe this is my bias because I was living through it, so I've heard of all of them. Parenthood by Ron Howard. That's really great. Really charming, underrated movie. Lock Up with Sylvester Stallone. That movie is awesome. I have not seen Lock Up in forever. John Amos is in it. Donald Sutherland, Tom Sizemore. Oh, I need to rewatch Lock Up. The Abyss by James Cameron. I don't think this movie lands on everywhere that it needs. It's that hybrid. It's between Aliens and Titanic, and it's the movie that apparently cemented Cameron's passion for the ocean and stuff, which led to Titanic, which is a pretty great movie. But The Abyss is definitely a great movie. I don't think it lands. It's kind of half Aliens, half Titanic, and just a whole lot of wetness. That is on August 9th. So it's funny. So Parenthood was August 2nd. Then 2 days later was Lock Up. And then 5 days later on the 9th was The Abyss. And then 2 days after that, on August 11th, was A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child. That's really funny. And then 5 days after that was Uncle Buck, the John Hughes movie with John Candy, classic, Macaulay Culkin, etc. These release dates are funny. There's just so much that they realize we need to start. I guess they thought they needed to stagger it because everything opening on the same weekend. That's so funny. It's so crowded. But then you get to August 18th. And August 18th, well, you got a lot of big movies, but these are more adult movies. So you got Casualties of War by De Palma, which I've seen is good. It's underrated. I don't think it hit big at the time. I don't think it did really well. I just listened to that really good podcast about the Bonfire of the Vanities, and they talked a little bit that Casualties of War didn't really hit at the time, and I seem to remember that because I think it was overshadowed by how strong Platoon was. But in retrospect, I think Casualties of War is pretty great. Michael J. Fox and Sean Penn, John C. Reilly's in it. John C. Reilly's in everything. I don't even know what the movie Cheetah is. What is that? Disney? Also known as Cheetah and Friends? Oh, starring Keith Coogan. There you go. Same day, August 18th, Cookie. I do sort of remember Cookie. with Peter Falk, Diane Wiest. Something to do with mafia. My dog doesn't remember Cookie either. Eddie and the Cruisers 2, Eddie Lives is fabulous. It's not as good as Eddie and the Cruisers by any stretch. And it's actually not that great of a movie. Hold on. But Eddie and the Cruisers 2 is that sequel where you go, man, Eddie and the Cruisers is such a cult movie. Of course the sequel's going to be crazy good or crazy bonkers or crazy something. And you get it. And it's just crazy bad and crazy flat and not remotely the spirit of the first movie. And so it then itself becomes this artifact of bad that I think is fun watching. The kid that his I guess it might be Bernie Colson. Yeah, it's Bernie Colson, who's a fine actor, but I remember he's the worst in it. Like, he's just so obnoxious in the movie about getting Eddie to go back on to start his music again. It's so obnoxious. Big movie. I still never seen this one. Sex, Lies, and Videotape to this day. I've never seen this. But another, aim for the adult audience, like the more mature audience. Funny, so it's like there's not a ton of, or in the beginning. I guess there's enough. There's not a ton of kids stuff. Aren't Cheetah terrible? But yeah, Sex, Lies, and Videotape. Mostly known, I think, for that title, where people would then use the three. The rule of three there and make parody stuff of it. And it wasn't there even a G.I. Am I thinking incorrectly? Wasn't there an episode of G.I. Joe that was named after this? Am I insane in thinking that? I don't know. But either way,
You were saying?
is over. And now
Mass is ready.
Destro's going to take us into G.I. Joe number 94. Let's see. It's funny because my version is because it's not Mark Bright doing the cover. Cover is Andy Kubert. That's wild. I don't think I ever realized that. And you look closer and you go, oh yeah, it's totally got a Joe Kubert look to it. Yeah, because my cover, the printing obscures the name. But yeah, it is an Andy Kubert cover. And then you look closer and you go, oh yeah. It's got that Joe Kubert feel to it, and that early Andy Kubert stuff. So Andy, not Adam, but Andy Kubert, dropping this great cover. It's a lot of trade dress on this, though. G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, Snake Eyes Trilogy, Part 1, Warrior Reborn. Then we have to say Snake Eyes gets a new face. So there's a whole, a third, no, almost half the page is taken up by just trade dress. That's a lot. It's a lot of trade dress. I wonder if it was originally envisioned just to be his face, and someone was like, what does this even mean? Yeah, it's a lot. So it's an iconic cover because of what's inside, but the cover itself, I feel like it's a lot. Like, yeah, like did they draw? I bet you he drew the whole face. And what's awesome, what's neat too here is it, especially with the Kubert lineage, it's harkening back to the Unknown Soldier stuff over at DC, where he had that wrapped up bandaged face. Now the artwork is great. It's definitely strong. It's this face that's getting unwrapped though still has the giant scar over the eye, which is kind of cool. It's also a little misleading because while he gets it, it's not really revealed in this issue. So I'm just throwing that out there. But either way,
Yo, Joe!
Exterminating Circumstances, or parentheses, or Burn This, BERN, because they're in Burn. I love a good story with a parenthesis. That always makes me laugh because we've all been there, creative types. You have two good ideas for a title, and you can't settle on one, so you give it the or treatment, which is fabulous. So we open again with this great Mark Bright penciled page, a really detailed page of this, super advanced surgical center. Script by Larry Hama, M.D. Bright pencils, Randy Emberlin inks, R.L. Parker lettering, it's Rick Parker, Bob Sharon colors, Bobby Chase editor, Tom DeFalco editor-in-chief. There's two nurses assisting the doctor. All this equipment is really, really looks, very high-tech, very futuristic. It's got a little bit of the brainwave scanner feel to it. And very cool. I love it still, even though we're giving him a new face. They go to the point of obscuring his face with one of the with like a light and with one of the machines. And we learn from Dr. Hundkinder that it took 6 separate operations, but it's going to be his masterpiece. Snake Eyes could be a walking advertisement for his clinic. But then he gives the game away a little bit, and he says, too bad. And too bad what, Dr. Hundkinder? Oh, nothing, because he knows what's coming.
Yo, Joe!
And Scarlett's waiting outside the door, just getting yelled at by the nurse practitioner, the front desk nurse lady. I like this. I like this text, and I like the way that Larry wrote this, because it doesn't play someone whose English is not their first language for the fool, but I think it correctly definitely gives us that other, but it definitely doesn't give us that they're too dumb thing. So basically, it's written in perfect English, except some of the words and terms are incorrectly put in the incorrect order. So you there, Fraulein Scarlett, or whatever your name is, you cannot by the operating room door B standing all day. You will in the waiting room be sitting like everyone else. Yes. So you could tell there's an intelligence given to this nurse, saying that, yeah, she speaks it. It's just, it's not her first language. So she's going to get some of the order, which I'm sure I know I butcher whenever I try to speak another language. And I bring this up because it's funny, because it contrasted to that very quick, very, inconsequential advertisement last month. And it's in this month's too, with Mr. Miyagi being like, Daniel-san, we gonna blah, 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 blah. Where this is a way to do that and not making the person sound, like they don't have any idea what they're talking about. They're just getting in the wrong order. And it still gives you that sense of other, that sense of they're not comfortable in this language. So I think that works really well. And he does that throughout this. And what's neat is that it happens when that lady's talking to Scarlett. So in the next page, when the doctor's talking to the nurses, it's not in that broken language, so that it's almost like, I'm assuming in that other room, they're actually speaking, maybe, I think he's probably speaks German. I would wager he speaks German, that because they call each other er and all that stuff. They're probably speaking German in the other room. They're just not giving us, they're not flipping it like he is. I'm spending too much time with this, but you guys know what I'm saying. It's very subtle, and I think it's great, and I think it's one of the great subtleties of comic books that often gets overlooked. So we see that Snake Eyes is doing well, except he's in deep REM sleep. And the doctor wants him that because he doesn't want Snake Eyes thrashing around. And Snake Eyes is like being held upside down, and it's funny, we actually get a full look at his face, which is crazy because I thought we were hiding it. Like, we went to great pains to hide it, but this is this is Snake Eyes' new face. Yeah, and it's not done as a reveal. So it's a little anticlimactic. It's funny. I don't know. It's weird.
Yo, Joe!
And in Snake Eyes' dream, he is remembering January 31st, 1968. And we know that because Stalker tells us it. And he is on the streets of Saigon with Storm Shadow and Stalker. And they're getting dropped off by some guy named... do we ever get his name? Oh, Corky Barnett. There you go. Oh, Corky. I wonder if this is... that seems like a very specific name. I wonder if that's someone that Larry actually knew. And from the date, this is actually the Tet Offensive. So this is when the Viet Cong made a big offensive, and I don't think these guys know it yet. So they are heading to 13 Rue Pasteur, and let's give it the accurate description that it deserves. The Tet Offensive was a coordinated series of North Vietnamese attacks on more than 100 cities and outposts in South Vietnam. The offensive was an attempt to foment rebellion amongst the South Vietnamese population and encourage the U.S. to scale back its involvement in the Vietnam War. The irony of us reading about this the same day/week we are pulling out of Afghanistan is not lost on me. And it did, in fact, start on January 31st, 1968. And it continued for 9 months. They kept this up, what they call the Tet Offensive, continued all the way through September 3rd, 1968. Or, sorry, September 23rd, 1968. So this is neat that Larry frames this around the Tet Offensive. So the Joes are unaware at this point that that's what's ramping up. And they're getting dropped off by this Corky Barnett dude. Behind them on a little motorbike are two dudes, one of them carrying a bunch of flowers that would be important.
Yo, Joe!
And the flowers get dropped away, and there's a big AK-47 or machine gun of some type. And a nice close-up. This is, it's an act of extreme violence, but I like the way Bright tells this story. You show the guys pulling the gun. He goes to an extreme close-up on the gun with like lens flare effects in the image. He uses this a little bit later in the comic too with Scarlet, where he puts the camera right at the barrel of her Uzi, and then this middle panel, the assassins get all blacked out, and so you just see their shape. Meanwhile, the bullets, you see them hitting everyone, or at least Storm Shadow, poor Corky, and Stalker gets hit as well. And poor Corky. Stalker just says, Corky bought the farm. I'm pretty okay. Stormy's been hit, but like they know Corky's gone, and Storm Shadow needs patching up. But Corky stays in the Jeep. This is what I'm getting at, guys. Corky's body, literal body, is still in the Jeep with Snake Eyes as Snake Eyes drives away. Snake Eyes has to take the time. He moves Corky's body over, but he doesn't pull his body out of the Jeep. Snake Eyes pushes the corpse of Corky into the passenger side seat so he can drive and chase these guys.
Yo, Joe!
And as he's driving down the street, in a move reminiscent, not seen since Weekend at Bernie's, Corky is drawn in the photo with Snake Eyes in multiple panels, just hanging dead out. Now I'm laughing because it's a kid's comic, but it's obviously this is done very purposefully. Because if you step back, the horror of it is actually quite real and quite frightening. These two North Vietnamese guys, I'm assuming they're North Vietnamese. They're shooting at him, or Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes is shooting at them. Snake Eyes is wearing, by the way, his traditional Vietnamese look, Vietnam War look of like the green camo floppy hat and the sunglasses and stuff. So we don't get a good look at his face. And they're driving through town, getting shot at by Snake Eyes. Nice detail all around. You absolutely get a sense of where you're at in this world by Bright. Snake Eyes doesn't say anything throughout this whole comic, which is the way we like it. And Corky doesn't say anything else either.
Yo, Joe!
Now, Corky, I'm gonna guess. Let me go back here for a second. I'm gonna guess that Corky was drawn in this panel, because the top panel, we get a little silent page here, which is nice. I always like when with a book with Snake Eyes just goes silent, because it always makes you think of it, and it's happened a couple times in recent issues. So this top panel has that close-up lens flare look of the machine gun shooting, which we were just talking about, that Bright does it multiple times in this book, which is nice. It's the North Vietnamese shooting at Snake Eyes. He has him looking in the proper direction, so he's looking left. Snake Eyes is coming from the right. The Jeep Snake Eyes is in gets hit and shot up pretty bad. Middle panel, it rolls over and explodes. Snake Eyes caught in the wreckage, and he's thrown clear, but he's safe, but he's not pursuing anymore, right? But no one shows what happened to Corky's body. I gotta assume they drew Corky in this top right panel. If you have this at home, look at it. You'll see what I'm saying. It cuts off really, really sharply. I have a strong feeling Corky's corpse was drawn, and they said, let's pull that out, because it's in every other panel. Because then the result being that Corky's corpse would have been rolled and destroyed in this Jeep, and that's a little too much even for G.I. Joe.
Yo, Joe!
Now, back to Dr. Modern Times and Dr. Hundkinder. He's working on Snake Eyes' face. And he's doing a great job of it. And you got to figure he's doing all this and he wants to get it done to show how great he is, and then we'll let Baroness have him. But he needs to first work on his Mona Lisa, his great thing, his greatest achievement, which is fixing this guy's most jacked up face. Scarlet gets a call from Hawk to check in. This is a little bit of narrative heavy lifting here, a little exposition of Scarlet filling us in. Now, bottom panel is nice, and this is that fortuitous timing that is just great about telling stories where she's looking out a window, and when she turns her back to get real with Hawk, no, really, why are you calling? So she's focusing on Hawk. She takes her eyes off the skies, and she would have seen all these Cobra helicopters flying in.
Yo, Joe!
We get more of the cartoons coming up, and Hawk is doing the filling us in on that B plot, which was the A plot last month, of Clutch and Rock and Roll that were held by the Baroness, and he's basically filling us in the last few issues where that truck exploded. And this is actually pretty fascinating. So Zorana and Roblox, they almost died in that explosion, so they actually been in the hospital for this whole time. And they've been over in Switzerland. They've been over here for weeks, probably 6 weeks or so. Long enough for Scarlet to get a postcard from Clutch and Rock and Roll. Long enough for Clutch and Rock and Roll to take their convalescence leave in Hawaii. And then they say on the following page, they talk about it, that they were unconscious for weeks. So, I'm going to throw out, this is a good 6 weeks since last issue.
Yo, Joe!
And when Zorana came to, she was so pissed off at the Baroness that she mentioned Dr. Hund. I can't say this normally. Hundkinder. So that clues Scarlet that he's got a connection to Cobra and blah blah blah. So Cobra's been stewing on this for 6 weeks. So again, I gotta figure that Hundkinder said to the Baroness, because you called her 6 weeks ago, let me operate on this dude. Let me fix his face up, because it'll make your torture and destruction of his face all the better. And then I can also get my reputation up by saying, hey, I'm the greatest doctor in the world. I can fix a dude's face even like this. So as this is all happening, they're called Aspids, I believe they are. The Cobra helicopters land on the rooftop, and the Baroness with a bunch of vipers, looks like a Toxo Viper and an Alley Viper, they jump out, and she tells them to head straight to the operating room. This is a fun bit of dialogue. The Toxo Viper says, we better move fast, Baroness. The Swiss frown on paramilitary activity within their borders. And her response is, you want me to take a people who invented cuckoo clocks seriously? That's pretty great.
Yo, Joe!
And I do think that bit of dialogue, the cuckoo clock thing, stuck with me. I think that was, I remember being charmed by that line when I was a kid. So Scarlet is now like, all right, we got to go. This is what's I love about this whole page, this whole, actually this issue, is that scene from The Godfather when Michael learns that the police escort or the police protection on his dad, who had been shot, has been removed from the hospital, and no one's guarding his dad. And so he's got to call his own guys to get down there, or he actually ends up calling Enzo the baker and tells him, but this is that moment of, there are people coming to this hospital to get someone who's absolutely incapacitated and cannot protect themselves, even though, in the Godfather case, he's the most powerful man in the world, but he's now powerless. In this case, Snake Eyes is he's Snake Eyes, the best G.I. Joe, period, but he is 100% powerless. So there's this ticking clock of, I can't let this guy down, and I've got no resources. In this case, Scarlet has a diplomatic pouch that she snuck an Uzi in to the country with, and now she's ready to deal. This is great. This is one of those great close-ups that Bright has in this book of these. He puts the camera at the barrel of the gun, and it just puts you just off kilter from being the target, but it puts the reader at a sense of dread, a sense of it adds a sense of threat to the character. And you look at that lower left panel of Scarlet, that's threatening, and more so, although it's a great drawing when she kicks the door in and everything, she looks angry enough, but there's no threat there. There's a threat in that lower left panel, and the lower right panel is just an action by Scarlett. So really smart. And that same concept of putting the camera right at the edge of the barrel, that threat that showed up with the North Vietnamese guys when they were shooting at Corky, at the dead Corky, and also when they first shot Corky on the page 2. It's that same angle, and Mark really does a great job with that, using that perspective.
Yo, Joe!
So I love when they use the random no-name Vipers to get exposition out of the main characters that we like. So this no-name Toxo is asking her, why are we, why this is just business. You're taking this pretty seriously, as if the Baroness would just tell this Toxo Viper her business, but she does, and it's great. And so then we start into this extended flashback. So we're getting as much a Baroness backstory here as we get Snake Eyes backstory. And it turns out at the Tet Offensive, the Baroness was also in Cologne or Cholon in 1968. She was 15 years old. Sections of Saigon were on fire. Fighting was in the streets. And she was with her brother, the Baron de Cobre. Man, I wish the people who wrote the Joe movie would have never read this comic book. But her brother was there helping on humanitarian mission, and he was her idol. She begged him to take her along with him on the next medical relief expedition. That's what he was there for. And so he finally said, okay, you can come with me to Saigon, but he had no idea that he was flying right into the Tet Offensive. And then in the language of comics, and when we go into these flashbacks, the panels and all the flashbacks have rounded edges. It's very subtle. It's a very simple trick if you're comic creators out there. If you need to shift time forward or backwards or whatever, just change the layouts of the exterior borders of the panels. Make them different. Different but uniform. So when you're reading it, you see square, 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 round corners. So now it's inset and it's somebody's memory. It's a really nice, easy visual trick. I feel like not enough people do that when they're telling, like flashback stuff. It's real easy to do. It's real important, I think.
Yo, Joe!
And then when you get to the next page, we're now living in it, and those borders go away. So now we're just telling the story. So you need, like they used it on the page where the transition was needed, but now we're just telling the story. And in this case, we see that DeCobre and her Baroness and her brother, they're waiting for the distribution of the goods, but there's no good there. It's this really empty room that Bright's drawn, and these two guys show up. Tran and, did they give the other guy's name? And the Baroness leaves her brother Eugen with Tran and this other guy, and these two are the assassins that just killed Corky, for God's sake. They murdered Corky. Moment of silence for Corky. And that was the last time she saw her brother alive.
Yo, Joe!
And now we go back to Baroness in full gear, and she says, that was the last time I saw my brother alive. The man we're looking for here was responsible for his death. Where is he? Where is Snake Eyes? We still don't know why Snake Eyes is responsible. But these guys burst into the door, and there's a great bit of dialogue. One of the Vipers says, it must be the ugly one on the operating table. And then you cut to the next panel, and on the operating table, it's Dr. Hunkinder, all strapped up. Scarlett tied them up upside down in a Predator-level move. She hoisted both nurses and the doctor upside down on the operating table. The doctor I can see because he's on the operating table. You could lay him and then flip it upside down. She hoisted the two nurses, hanging them from the lights. That's a move. That's a strong move. And then we see that Scarlett's shuffling Snake Eyes down the hall. I love this bottom 3-panel sequence. Again, well, once again, let me reiterate how great it is to see backgrounds being used. There's geography, there's understanding, there's uniformity of color of walls so that you can understand, get a feel of where they're at. In this case, the camera is staying the same, but as they're getting closer to the camera, this is at the end of a hallway. She's wheeling Snake Eyes down the center of it. The camera's static. As she gets closer, the camera they get a little more visible. And now, right as before they would, like literally run into the camera, you get Snake Eyes' face. And so now his head takes up most of it. Scarlett's face is cut off halfway through in this image because
Yo, Joe!
we're now back to 1968. And now we're seeing the rest of that exchange with Baroness's brother through Snake Eyes' eyes. So the camera goes into Snake Eyes' eyes, into his thoughts. And so now we're here. Now we're seeing it from Snake Eyes' perspective. So Snake Eyes chasing the dudes that killed his best friend Corky. That's right. I've elevated him to best friend status. Hashtag RIP Corky. Snake Eyes is now outside the window. He trailed them to this office, the warehouse, and we can hear that Eugen is yelling about, like, they were supposed to be international observers, and there's purely humanitarian mission. Supplies are supposed to be doled out, and he learns that these two dudes used all that money on black market to buy guns and explosives, and they're like, that's what the people needed. What use of medical supplies if the people aren't free? Baroness's brother is very upset, and in a shocking display of violence, although not surprising because they just murdered Corky, Tran just butchers Eugen and mows him down in cold blood. I will say this: in 2.5 pages of character appearances and of information, really only 2 pages because he's really not on half. 2.5 pages. Larry gives us a fully formed brother, someone who has ideals and we care about him, and he's upset and he's got goals, and taking him out, there's a sense of loss there. There's a sense of tragedy there. I think that's really good. Like, he did a really good job of that, of getting us to care about the Baroness's brother. And then I'd forget about him for 25 years. But, in this moment, you go, oh, wow, okay, I get this. And you see that when they see that she looked, she literally says, I looked up to him, I idolized him so much. You can see how losing someone that is that idealized could break someone.
Yo, Joe!
And so Snake Eyes comes crashing through the window. More silent stuff, which is perfect for Snake Eyes. He shoots Tran and that other dude with his pistol, shoots him dead. Eugen is still kind of falling back. Like, this is all happening very quickly, actually. I think that's what we're meant to see, because Eugen's kind of frozen in the same position. So he's still staggering back. So in the same moment that the first gunshots went off, Snake Eyes came crashing through, and it's all very, very fast happening.
Yo, Joe!
And he's clutching his chest as he crumples to the floor and dies. And the only thing that the then Baroness sees is Eugen clutching everything, hitting the ground, Snake Eyes standing there with a pistol in his hand, smoking gun, and looks like he's facing Eugen. So it does look like he killed him. And again, we get the round borders here because it's about to transition us out of this flashback.
Yo, Joe!
To the modern times when she's running through the corridors and after him. So they see them, Scarlett wheeling Snake Eyes down a hall. She throws him into her room. She overhears that they want him alive, and she realizes that's not good for anybody involved. She shoots out the lights. It's a good thing the Night Vipers are there. Get a little name check for Night Vipers and Alley Vipers. Everyone gets drawn into shadow, which is cool.
Yo, Joe!
And so now it's just a matter of time, because they're on an upper floor. They're on at least the second or third floor, and Scarlett's trapped. Like, she's really trapped. She knows that doesn't mean it makes her extraneous, but she's not going to make it easy. She's going to go down fighting. A really nice moment, Scarlett says, because we see some alley vipers coming in from the outside. They're climbing on the roof, like on the ledge. And Scarlett says, "I wish you were conscious enough to hear me and understand what I'm saying, so I could tell you I love you one more time." And then, wishing is for weak sisters. Come on, you Cobra sissies, let's get this over with. And we once again get that great Mark Bright lens flare with the gun and the camera at the gun barrel choice that he keeps visiting in this comic, which we visit again on the next page. And I can't get enough of it. I love it.
Yo, Joe!
So these alley vipers it's a fun drawing. The three alley vipers bust in the windows. Scarlett's hit in the shoulder, drops her Uzi. She's on the ground. Baroness is going to finish her off, and we get back again. Now this time, the camera is now at the point of the barrel. That's fun. So all the other camera barrel choices were adjacent. Now that barrel is pointed directly at us, which makes sense because this is the most dangerous shot of the whole issue. Condolences and no disrespect meant to the shot that took out Corky, but this is the shot. This is the shot. We're about to go into the shot, and it's Baroness pulling her pistol on Scarlett, and so we're now looking right down the barrel. We are seeing what Scarlett is seeing, and we see the Baroness says she wanted to do it herself.
Yo, Joe!
And then we pull back from that, and we get a big blam, and it's a side view, and it's the Baroness shooting. There's so much light flare, I'm calling it that lens flare from the gun. It illuminates the room. Remember, because she was shooting out the lights, so it's like there's a flash in the room, like a flash bulb going off. So the lighting is great, and imagine how great this panel. So this panel is great. It's strong. It's simple. It's clean. But put your hand over or cover up where Scarlett's hand is. And you're like, oh, that's a strong image. And then pull it back and show that Mark drew Scarlett's clutching or hand getting, it drew the victim in there without drawing the victim. And you're like, oh, it's so much more powerful of an image just by having the hand there as she gets shot with the shaking of the hand, the shock of the hand. It's really, really great. And then we get the Baroness gloating over the still comatose Snake Eyes. And we see that she's going to take him back to New York. She says, I should have waited until you were here to appreciate that. But we'll have plenty of time to make up for it back in New York. Plenty of time. Now, before we flip the page here, I noticed this a couple issues ago. And this isn't the first time. But I wasn't sure if it was temporary or whatever. But now this really is happening. They stopped putting the bullpen bulletins in the G.I. Joe books 3 or 4 issues ago, and we've been getting the star signals, which is the Marvel Star comic stuff. So it's all the kids' books. So someone made the decision to really, they must have gotten, I can only imagine that they got some market research that said or maybe they just wanted to get people pumping up the Star stuff, but somehow it went from G.I. Joe being appealing to that same age bracket that were reading X-Men and Spider-Man and that that teenager bracket, and now they thought that they were going to be appealing to the Star readers, which are kids like Heathcliff. We talk about Alf, right? But Alf, Count Duckula, which I think is just a complete misreading of who your G.I. Joe audience is, even at the time. Obviously now it's not remotely close because we're all old men and women and we're just old. But even then, so what I'm looking at, guys, is a page with Star signals, and it's got Danger Mouse and Heathcliff and Alf and Count Duckula on the left page, and on the right page is a picture of the Baroness shooting a pistol into a woman's skull. There is a disconnect that is happening at Marvel Editorial on this stuff that is frightening. And I only wonder if, it's funny, I'm about to say this next sentence because I have a commentary about that when we get to the letters page. I wonder if this helped start the decline of readership or something. Something's going wrong here where they think this is appealing to that kid market. And before, I say this because before it was just regular X-Men stuff. It was the regular Marvel Universe bullpen bulletin stuff, right? So,
Yo, Joe!
when we go to the next page, we got an ad for DuckTales magazine, and it's throughout this. So there had to be some survey or something that showed this. And I can't imagine that was the right move. But meanwhile, in Oakland, so we leave Byrne with that shocker of a cliffhanger, and we check in very, very, very briefly with Billy. Remember Billy and his mom from like 6, 7, 8 issues ago, where his mom showed up and Billy was going to go live with her. Billy's living with his mom in Oakland. He gets on a little scooter and he starts motorizing away, and he's a car drives and almost runs into him. He says, watch where you're going, you jerk. And he actually, Billy skids out, and it's almost like he did that on purpose.
Yo, Joe!
And he did, because he's Raptor. And he drives with his wingsuit on, which is an insane choice, but he does. So he gets out of the car, and Billy jumps up and gives him a nice kick. Actually, I like the way Bright draws everybody, but I like the way Bright draws Billy. I think it always works well. He jumps up, kicks Raptor in the face, and he's about to beat the crap out of him. And Raptor says, "Hold on. How about if I told you that I knew where your father, the real Cobra Commander, was buried, and I knew who killed him?" And Billy says, "Start talking." So this is fun. So we're leaning up to learning that, Cobra Commander is not necessarily as buried as we thought he was. So next issue is No Turning Back. It's so good. This issue's so good. I know we're running a little long in this episode. I appreciate you guys staying with me. So we get to Postbox The Pit. First of all, thank you. Last issue on Twitter, you guys had great response to that Craig Anderson, to the talk about Craig Anderson stuff from our friend Yorktown Joe. That was awesome. We had a lot of people talking about it on Twitter and sharing his stuff. It's funny. So the pronunciation of that hashtag was supposed to be like Joe Dios, like diagrams, like the word, or I'm sorry, like the word diorama, like Dios. And I was saying like Dios, like Almighty. Which, hey, I like that. Listen, Dios, vaya con Dios is one of the greatest phrases in any language. So we got some fun letters in this. One from Russell Hamilton out of Bellevue, Washington. And again, as always, guys, if you hear this and you know one of these dudes, or you are one of these dudes, please, please, please reach out, joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know, because I love hearing that. There is a long-winded, opinionated one here from a William Wade. No address given. And he is taking offense to Roxy from a previous letters page not liking that girl fight. He says if she doesn't like the girl fight, she doesn't have to buy the comics. If there were no girl fights, they shouldn't even have girls in the comics. Girl fights are no different to watch or read about than man fights. I would imagine in a fight like that, people would watch and wonder who won or something like that. William Wade has a lot of thoughts on girl fights. William Wade may have stormed the Capitol on 1/16. Anyway, there's also a great one here from Deuce, which we're going to actually dig into. And we also have one from Stuart Clark out of Lexington, Kentucky, which is fun. And Deuce, D-U-C-E, from Houston, Texas. Deuce, if you're out there, what up? The Lone Wolf situation rears its head. Once again, guys, we have more Lone Wolf information, and God bless him. Deuce tries to clear it up. He says, well, first of all, he starts out with an offensive statement that bothers me when, and I know I just did it a little earlier with the Star comic stuff. I get it. But where he says, this is talking about making ninja characters, and it'd be cool if you built them up in less than 20 issues. The suspense would be back, and you might get some new subscribers. I always hate that. Like, hey, maybe your business would be better if you blankety blank. I hate that second-guessing people. I get that all the time in my real world, and it is so obnoxious because people don't understand anything. So that's why when I'm talking about the Star comic stuff, I'm doing exactly what Deuce did here. So I recognize that. I'm actually asking it as an archivist. Something shifted, and they made some choices here. And in retrospect, was it the right choice? I don't know. But it definitely was a choice. They definitely made a choice to go Star comic ads instead of regular comic book ads. And I'm just pointing out the difference there. Deuce here is, I think, being a little presumptive. And if I'm being presumptive, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be that way. So this is great. Deuce is going to clear up the wolf. And this is, again, from 1989. Quote, do you have a computer with a modem? If so, you know what a handle is. If you don't, it's an alias you use instead of a real name, which means it's harder to figure out on games if you killed a friend or foe. It also has other purposes. Quote, Lone Wolf is a handle on some BBS's, bulletin board systems, that I am on. I think anyone has the right to call himself, quote, Lone Wolf, even if someone else already does. unless he signs for someone else. So this guy has established a new club, the LLLWAOH, Long Live Lone Wolf and Other Handles. And all you have to do is write to me, address will be below, telling your handle, alias, or nickname, your full address, and your phone number. And I will then have a quarterly newsletter. You will need to send letters about what you think about the situations in G.I. Joe and other comics. You will also receive other things that you won't in the TTAA LWPC. Thank you. I don't know what that is. He doesn't actually say what that is. What's the TTA? To all TT in early, he opens it with to all TTAA LWPC members and Joes. What does that even mean? Thank you. Long live Handles. Long live Lone Wolf. Yes. Long live Deuce. Yo, Joe. Guys, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to send a letter to Deuce. I'm going to send a letter, and I encourage all of you to send a letter. Write to, it'll cost you the cost of a stamp. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it today. Write to LLLWAOH Club, attention Deuce, DUCE, 1907 Duffield Lane, DUFFIELD Lane, Houston, Texas, 77071. I'm going to send a lovely note just saying, hey, Deuce, are you still there? I would love to be a part of the LLLWAOH Club. And let's get to more Lone Wolf talk from Postbox The Pit. I will keep you all posted on what happens with that letter that I promise you I will send out today. So with that, listeners, you're the best. I appreciate you here sticking with me. We're running a little bit long today, but I hope it was worth it for that. And now you, Joe. And Joeing is half the battle.